Hi, and welcome to Managing My Own Radical Change, from trauma to transformation, where we dive into the journey from trauma to personal empowerment. I'm Vonda Page, your radical change leadership coach, consultant, and survivor of narcissistic abuse. In this series, I share my personal experiences, insights, demonstrating how to break free from the constraints of narcissistic abuse and manage your own radical change. Through candid storytelling and practical advice, you'll learn how to navigate your healing journey and transform your life. Join me as I guide you through the process of self-empowerment, personal growth, and leadership development. Welcome to Managing My Own Radical Change. Have you ever felt like you were in an unending cycle of the same thing happening every day over and over, whether it is an unending cycle of pain, an unending cycle of repetitive behavior, an unending cycle of seeing the same results? Well, what if the roots of that pain go back to your earliest memories? You know, there was a time in my life where I thought I was woke or awake because I started doing a deep dive on psychology and relationships and abuse at a very early age, literally somewhere around the age of 9 or 10. And since that time, I've been consistently considering myself on, a path to healing. And I've had therapy and done other things. And it hasn't been until recently that I realized that I've had a lifetime of narcissistic abuse beginning from childhood. So in this episode, I'm going to share some personal stories and insights. And from there, I am going to bring you, hopefully, to a place where you can transition your own pain, your own story, your own life to a place where you can begin to manage your own radical change. Welcome to Managing Your Own Radical Change. And in this episode, Healing from Narcissistic Abuse, we're going to deep dive into a personal journey. My name is Vonda Page, and if you've ever felt trapped in a cycle of pain without knowing why, this is the episode you want to listen to. I grew up in a household where verbal, emotional abuse, it was daily. It was daily. Physical abuse was maybe weekly, maybe a couple of times a week, but it could have been even more than that. And my mom's behavior was so harsh and so inconsistent. I was always like, what is going on? Like, what is what? And it started at a really young age. But I was constantly, wondering if this was a thing that was going to get me, quote, in trouble. And it wasn't until later that I realized these patterns weren't normal family dynamics. They weren't normal family dynamics, but they were finely ingrained, deeply seated narcissistic personality disorder tendencies, right? Narcissism is a spectrum and we're all on it to some degree, right? However, verbal, emotional, physical abuse comes out of people who have narcissistic personality disorder. So before we get into, what these behaviors look like, I'm going to, let's take us clinical for a minute, right? Let's take us science and research, just because a lot of us, have love of the written word. So let's just break it down real quick. Narcissistic personality disorder, or what is also shortly called NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, and borderline personality disorder, or BPD, are both complex mental health conditions, and each have distinct characteristics. Now, according to the top people in psych, these disorders have some basic traits, and I'm just going to summarize them really quickly, but I'm going to encourage you to do your own research just so you can check things out for yourself. And because managing your own radical change is about managing your mindset, the things that you think about, managing your message, the things that you say, the things you read, the things you intake, and also, using critical thinking when it comes to the way you think and the way you take in things. So look it up for yourself. Narcissistic personality. So I'm going to give you the top 6 things that they talk about. That is basically the summary of each of them. When it comes to NPD, or narcissistic personality disorder, the top thing is grandiosity. People that have this grandiose sense of their own importance. They think that they deserve special treatment, right? They overestimate their talents and achievements. They talk big, they act big, and it's a bunch of fluff. The second is the need for admiration. They constant need for people to validate them, whether it's for looking good, whether it is for being smart, whether it's for being great, but they constantly need you to fawn over them and tell them how great they are. And it's really, they're preoccupied with it. And it's such that you'll see them do things like dress up in ways that are like way, 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 way overdressed. And it's because they want other people to notice them, and they want other people to tell them how great they look. You'll see people that, I'll never leave the house without looking like this because blah, 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 because they always want to be complimented. That's a really good example. Lack of empathy. Number 3, they struggle to recognize and care about other people. You could keep on telling them over and over how bad something they're doing is fucked up, and they will never give a fuck. They will never give a fuck. And it results in manipulative and exploitative things, because they'll keep on harming you over and over, and they don't care how much they take over and over. They don't care they don't care that you crying. They don't give a shit. They have no empathy. However, because of their grandiosity, they know how to exhibit empathy super easy. Because of this need for admiration, they'll give you fake empathy so that you give them admiration, and you call them empathetic, and you call them kind, and you call them pretty, because that's what they need. Number 4 is a sense of entitlement. They think that they supposed to have special favors and privilege, and when they don't get it, they get pissed. They get pissed. It don't matter whether it is. If they think they supposed to get a certain amount of likes on the video because they had their tits and their ass out, they mad that they didn't get it. If they think that they supposed to get, first in line because, they was, dressed up and they didn't get it, whatever. If they think that they supposed to get listened to because they think their story is more important, they are going to be mad as shit. And that frustration and anger is going to come out when you don't meet what they think they're entitled to get. If it's your attention, your time, they're going to come to you no matter what it is. If you don't give them the attention they think they deserve, if what they believe they're entitled to, they're going to come after your ass. Number 5, interpersonal difficulties. Relationships can be challenging due to their need for admiration, lack of empathy, and tendency to exploit other people. They will always be exploiting other people, period, for their personal gain. What I figured out is that they are transactional. People that have narcissistic personality disorder are very transactional. All they seeing from you is what they can get from you, and they will give you nothing. They will give you nothing but empty promises, what they call future faking. They will give you nothing but empty promises. They will never be there for you. I don't care what you ask them. You can ask them the smallest thing and be like, I just need you to do this one thing. I remember asking somebody, just sit with me. Just sit with me for an hour. I need to get something done. I just need you to sit with me and keep me focused. Just be quiet. Just sit with me. And I couldn't get that. But yet this same person wanted key all day and night talking about stupid shit. I'm like, who are these people? I don't know what you're talking about. These is people where, on the internet. I don't even know who they are, and I don't care. And if you're talking about famous people, those are not real people. That's the characters that the media puts in front of us because their bosses said this is the characters that you put in front. So all of it's lies and bullshit. Why are we wasting time on that when we could really be doing real shit? And the thing that I noticed and realized for myself is that all this time I wasn't actually working on my healing because I was, again, involved in another narcissistic abusive relationship, and you don't realize it until that person's need for excessive admiration, their lack of empathy, and when they're exploiting you for their own personal gain, and then you're like, oh, damn. And even when you leave a relationship out of a narcissistically abusive relationship, they still going to be exploiting you because anything that you left for them, they're going to use it and take it as theirs. They're not going to be like, well, this was ours together, so I just won't use it or I'll let them have it. They're going to exploit you to the bitter end. Bitter end. Now, the last one, vulnerability to criticism. They act like they so confident, but they have no self-reflection. You can't sell them anything, because if you give them one little bit of criticism, they gonna go the fuck off. It don't matter how true it is, they gonna go off. Do you know, one time I know somebody that this is a person that I used to be in a relationship with, and this person had a little flaw, right, in their appearance. Now, this appearance is a made up appearance because it's something that they have on, right? So this person had a wig on, and the wig wasn't looking good at all. And I don't wear wigs, so I don't even know the different parts of the wig. I know people talk about lace. I don't really know what that means. But anyway, the wig wasn't looking good. And because this person is so self-centered and so into their looks, I didn't know how to say to them, that doesn't really look good. Because maybe it just didn't look good to me, but they was fine with it. But I knew that they couldn't take criticism because I have heard the person respond to criticism before. So I just was like, oh, I'll just let it go. And, next time they look in the mirror, maybe they'll figure it out, or maybe it looks good to them, or maybe that's how they want it. I don't know. But whereas I would have wanted somebody to say something to me, I wouldn't say anything, because I know that you can't criticize a person that has narcissistic personality disorder. You can't say not one thing about them that is negative, because they will have an intense reaction. And depending on how they act, it doesn't matter. They don't really have any confidence. The confidence is all an act. It's all an act. And if something doesn't go their way, that's a whole nother story. And the criticism or defeat could be something that you think is so small you can't even imagine that somebody would get upset by it. But somebody with narcissistic personality disorder, they're going to be mad at every single thing. If anything that is a slight, a grievance, a slightest slight, the slightest slight, they're going to go off. They're going to go off, and you will be punished. Now, borderline personality disorder is going to sound very, very similar. So a lot of what I have learned in all of my research is that there's a lot of intersection between the two. So the first one is emotional instability, intense and unstable emotions. People have rapid mood swings, like they go the fuck off, and they can't really regulate their emotional responses. Unstable relationships, extreme fluctuations, chaotic interpersonal dynamics, idolizing and devaluating other people. Fear of abandonment, pervasive fear of abandonment and rejection. It leads to frantic efforts to avoid real and imagined abandonment. For example, people telling you they're going to kill themselves if you leave. Impulsive behaviors, self-destruction, substance abuse, reckless driving, self-harm, identity disturbance, unstable self-image leading to significant changes in identity, goals, or values. People who go through one day they going to church, next day they on drugs, next day they are a preacher in the church, next day they alcoholic dealing with hookers. They always got something going on with their identity and their values. Next one is chronic feelings of emptiness. They always say they empty, they bored, they don't have no meaning or purpose, they don't know what to do with their lives. And then difficulty with self-control. They cannot manage their impulse, they can't maintain self-control, and they have different maladaptive behaviors to get it figured out. So the summary of the two together is they both make somebody's quality of life and relationships very hard, and they both require treatment, and psychotherapy, is recommended. Of course, they talk about medicine. And of course, they talk about medicine to manage symptoms. And I'm not here to talk about medicine or any other type of intervention other than the intervention of you as an individual person managing your own radical change. And so what that means is getting the hell out of the relationship. Getting the hell out of any relationships that are harmful to yourself. And again, this is something that I'm just learning to really put it all together. And if my story resonates with you, I want to encourage you to join the Leadership Learning Collective and download the Leaders Learn Radical Change app or the Radical Change app. Message me, and we could take it from there. And I also have a journal which offers a practical opportunity for some reflection and progress. You can also sign up for coaching, or you can book a consultation. But let's get into it. Let's get into it. So, have you ever felt like you were trapped in a cycle of pain and you didn't understand why? And then you realize that, damn, this pain goes all the way back to your childhood. And when I think about like my earliest experiences, like with my mom, like the one thing that really hits for me, and I was not in school age when this started. And I know I wasn't in school age because I was at my grandparents' house like all day. I wasn't only there after school. And I know I was there all day because when my mom came and picked me up, she came to pick me up straight from work. And she said to me, "Come on, Arbuckle." And I go to get my jacket or get my stuff or whatever. And my grandfather bust out into this maniacal laugh. He starts belly laughing like some kind of like whatever. And I'll never forget his face. And he was crying, laughing. He was like, "That's what your mom calls you? That's what your mom calls you?" And he started cracking up. And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "You don't even know what it means, do you?" And then he was like looking at my mom saying, "That's a shame. You calling that girl that name and she don't even know what it means." And then I was like looking like, "Well, what is it?" And apparently Arbuckle was some kind of character back in the day in the 20s or the 30s. And it was a man, and his name was Fatty Arbuckle. And so my mom was calling me Arbuckle all for however long up until that time. And the word Arbuckle meant fatty. So my mom was calling me fatty my whole young childhood. And that day, I stopped speaking to my mom. I wouldn't talk to her. I cried. She wouldn't apologize. And so I stopped talking to her. And I didn't talk to my mom for almost a year after that. I mean, I would not speak to her. I would not open my mouth except for I would say, yes, no, thank you, yes, no, thank you, no, thank you, no, thank you, yes, yes, please, no, thank you, yes, thank you, no, no, thank you. That's all I would say. I wouldn't say anything. She would say, "How are you?" I would say, "Fine, thank you." "How was school?" "Fine, thank you." That's all you're going to say? "Yes, thank you." Like, I wouldn't say anything to her. And then one day, she went over my grandparents' house, and she was crying and crying, talking about, "Vonda won't speak to me. She won't speak to me." It was a long time. It might have even been more than a year. It was a very long time. I wouldn't say anything. But yes, thank you, no, thank you. I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't matter how she could hit me. It didn't matter. I didn't say anything. And so she begged my grandparents. She begged and begged and begged. And she was like, "Make her speak to me. Make her talk to me." And my grandparents was like, "You got to talk to your mom. You got to talk to your mom." And then they started begging me. And it was this whole like manipulative thing. And so my grandparents basically made me accept my mom's apology by begging me and trying to make me feel bad. And then my mom telling me that she got sick because of it. She got asthma and all this kind of stuff. So at a very, 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 very early age, I was not only manipulated, not only abused, but I was also triangulated. And triangulation, they talk about tools of narcissism, and triangulation is one of those tools. And basically, it's like when they put you and another person in like in this threesome, and they get you and the other person to fight, or they gang up with the other person. So, like they talk about gaslighting as being one of the tools, right? They talk about projection, they talk about mirroring, but like this triangulation is about getting this other person to create some kind of nonsense, competition, jealousy, or whatever. But it's like bringing in another party. So then it was like, then my grandparents was in. Now, my grandfather was a narcissist, and my mother. So my grandfather and my mother was bringing in my grandmother, who was my only advocate, to triangulate her against me so that I would allow my mom to go back to mistreating me. So I did, because that's all the tools and skills I had as a child. And it stayed happening until 2018. And this was probably like 1975 or something like that. Because I probably was 5 or 6 years old. And from that time forward, I went to many, 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 many other situations like that with my mom, and then somebody in my family that she triangulated, making me, accept her apology, even though she never really apologized. Making me get back in a relationship. That's just how your mom is. You know how she is. She can't help it. She can't help it. It's just that nobody holds her accountable, and y'all don't care enough about me to protect me or help me. So she used to triangulate my grandmother, my aunt, my one aunt that was nice to me. The rest of them, they had the same thing, but they just would use me to triangulate their own kids, right? And so it's a whole thing that people do to provoke this jealousy and this insecurity, and to manipulate people. People will do it on social media. People will be like, oh, me and this person are friends, and this person is fighting. And then next thing you know, they sharing some kind of text message or some kind of screenshot of something, blah, 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 because they trying to show, some this and that. So one of the things, right, when it comes to when you really start to go back in your childhood and you start to unpack how you got groomed into excessive abuse, accepting abusive behavior. Now, if I look back, right, and I say my mom had narcissistic personality disorder, but my first husband, well, actually both of them had borderline personality disorder, because the difference in borderline personality disorder, right, is that people have this thing where they can't control their shit, right? So in borderline personality, you always emotionally up and down. You going off, right? Now my mom used to go off, right? But she didn't go off in front of other people. She only went off in front of me or people in her family that she was trying to manipulate. That's different. My ex-husband, both of them would go the fuck off anytime, anywhere, and make people scared. Now, the one, of course, he only did it over people who he could manipulate and control. The other one, I think he used his shit very, very, I think he used it manipulatively, okay? So one of the things in borderline, right, is they have this big time fear of abandonment, whereas I don't think people with narcissistic personality disorder give a fuck if people leave. They don't have any empathy, but they have an entitlement. So they think they entitled that this person is in their life. They entitled you're going to do shit for them. They entitled everything is going to be a certain way, but they don't give a fuck. They don't have a fear of abandonment. And fear of abandonment gets created in people who have been left, right? Who have been abused, who have been abandoned, right? So I can imagine that if I hadn't started researching my own stuff and figuring out, stuff about me and where I thought my weaknesses might lie, I could imagine maybe I could have been a person that maybe I would have had that, right? Maybe I would have had borderline personality disorder, because I wasn't ever allowed to cry. I wasn't allowed to be mad. So I had to keep all my emotions bottled up. I could act happy, but only if everybody else was happy at the same time. I could act sad, but only if everybody else was sad at the same time. I could act a certain way, but only if everybody else was. Otherwise, it was children are to be seen, they not to be heard, and you better not express no emotions, especially not any emotions that are contradictory to the way I think you should feel. So, for example, I can remember getting smacked in the face and crying. And then somebody saying, you need to smile. Why are you crying? And blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, looking at somebody like, you must be crazy. Difficulty with self-control. People who have narcissistic personality don't necessarily have a difficulty with self-control. They have a sense of entitlement that makes them do whatever, but they don't necessarily have difficulty with self-control. That's a challenge, right, in managing impulses, right? So that's a person that is always about smacking somebody. That's a person that's always about cussing somebody out. That's a person that's always about throwing stuff, right? That's my ex-husband. He was always throwing stuff, always breaking stuff, always punching holes in the walls, right? The other one was always like driving crazy, right? Both of them always with the driving so crazy. Like, one of the things that I will tell you, that if you around a person that is an unstable driver and they always peeling off, or they get mad and so they slam on the brakes, or they get mad and they whatever, don't get in a car with a person that has a fear of abandonment, person that's always talking about they're gonna kill themselves or they're gonna kill you. People with impulsive behavior, don't get in a car with them people. If they can't control their impulses and how they talk, let's say somebody always getting fired from the job because they can't control themselves, don't get in a relationship with that person. That's a hothead. And that person, if they don't care about their livelihood and the job, they definitely don't care about leaving you on the damn side of the road. It has happened to me 2 times on the side of the highway. 2 times. 2 times. 2 times. And I still married him. Yeah, and that chronic feeling of emptiness, and boredom. So they don't really feel like they never have anything to live for. So that's why they can engage in reckless behaviors and be all over the place like that, because they don't really have goals. Whereas people with narcissistic personality disorder, they have a grandiose sense of themselves. So they might have goals because they think they're so important and they deserve all this stuff, right? And they overinflate everything. I was the best this and that. I was the number one this and that. I was the that. And they lying. They was the average, but in their mind, they thought they was the best because somebody was always telling them they was cute. Somebody was always telling them they was good. Somebody was always telling them this and that. And somebody blew their head up for a bunch of unnecessary reasons. And they need this admiration so fucking bad. So bad. I remember my mom used to need me to say, yes, you are my mother. That's all she needed me to say. And I wouldn't say it. I would say, I know. And then she would be, I'm your mother. And I'd be like, I know that. Well, you need to act like it. Well, why don't you act like a mother that cares about her daughter? And then she would pop me in the mouth. Okay, well, I don't know what to tell you about how you want me to act. You treating me like garbage, but you want me to treat you like the princess. Those 2 things are contradictory. It's not, we can't be you treating me like garbage and I'm treating you like the queen. Because the queen, you have to treat the subject a little bit nicer. You can't just smack me in the mouth because I said something you don't feel like hearing. And the thing I said wasn't even that big of a deal. But yet, you are popping me for every little everything. You act like I can't say anything. Like, you cannot say anything that could provoke a reaction. And the thing is, as a child, right, you don't know what your abuser is going to react to when you really little, because you just kind of learn it. And then you feel like, well, damn, they reacting to everything. So then you're kind of like in there. You're in there. You are in there. And so, the way I want y'all to think about it is that, when it comes to looking at figuring out how your life got to where it got to, you have to go back and you have to look at your trauma in your life. And when I looked back in my trauma, I realized, like, oh, wow, I got some shit with me. And this is going to be pretty interesting about how my life is going to shape out, because some stuff really happened to me that I'm not feeling. I knew it wasn't right. I knew it wasn't normal. I spent a lot of time around other adults who used to tell me that I was nice, I was smart, I was funny, I was a great reader, I was sensitive, I was a good helper, I was good at cooking, I was good at hair, I was good at helping taking care of little kids, I was good at reading. Like, I was good at all these things. So why is my mom always hollering at me? Why is she always beating me? Why is she always screaming? Oh, well, that is because she got her own stuff, right? She got her own issues, right? Her own issues and problems. Inconsistent behavior is one of the things that people with narcissistic behavior indicate, right? You never know how they going to react, but it's always to keep you off balance. But my mom will be super nice to me, take me somewhere really nice, buy me something really nice. And then she talking nasty as shit to me. And then the next day, she's mad at me about something and I ain't even do nothing. That's what they do. Inconsistent behavior. The entitlement, right? They believe some kind of special treatment. So my mom think that she could treat me like garbage, but I'm supposed to still talk to her and treat her the way I treat everybody else in my life. I'm your mother. Okay, then act like it, right? Exploitation. Using other people to get their personal gain and don't give a shit about them. Man, when I share stories about some business people that I have worked with and tell y'all the deviant, deep down stuff they did, you're going to be like, damn. Blame shifting, right? Always putting the blame on other people. My mom beat the shit out of me one time talking about because she didn't know where I was. I wasn't on punishment. You didn't tell me not to leave the house. I was down the street jumping rope. I was jumping rope. If you would have walked down outside, walked to the middle of the street and called my name, I would have heard you. Unless we was all screaming and talking at the exact same time you was calling my name. You got in your car, you drove. What a football field is 100 yards. You drove 30 yards. And here I am. And you're mad because you saying you didn't know where I was. No, something happened in the house. And somebody said, you don't even know where your child is. And then you realize, oh, maybe I don't. But literally I was down the street. You didn't remember when I left or remember the status. So when somebody said that to you, it triggered something in you. Okay, blame it on me by beating me. Okay, but that's what happens, right? So anyway, there are some very deep insights, very deep insights that I have gained through my deep dive into my own healing and my deep dive into my own path to radical change and discovering how I need to create this new chapter by healing from narcissistic abuse. So I want to say, hey, thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to Radical Change. This episode, Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. If you found today's episode valuable, I want you to subscribe. I want you to rate. I want you to leave a review. I want you to share this podcast with anyone who might benefit from our journey together. Remember that healing is a process and you don't have to do it alone. Stay tuned for the next episode where we'll dive deeper into how I realized that I was a victim of narcissistic abuse. How I actually realized I was a victim of narcissistic abuse. Like what